Pope Francis has built a strong connection with Cardinal Luis Tagle, a figure who might play a key role in shaping the future of the Catholic Church. Their close relationship has often sparked curiosity and, at times, stirred up controversy. I welcome you to our country, to the city of Manila, and to the Cathedral Basilica of the Immaculate Conception, the Pope once said, marking the beginning of a significant bond. Now, Pope Francis has decided to put Cardinal Tagle in the spotlight. The question is, why now? And how could this affect the Church's influence on a global scale? The bond between Pope Francis and Cardinal Tagle is rooted in shared values, mutual admiration, and a forward-thinking vision for the Church. Cardinal Tagle reflects many of the qualities Pope Francis values: humility, warmth, and a deep sensitivity to the needs of ordinary people. Since becoming Pope, Francis has dreamed of a church for the poor, a vision Tagle brought to life during his time in Manila, even before being made a cardinal. Their partnership goes beyond formalities or ceremonies. It's driven by a shared mission to keep the Church relevant, especially during challenging times. This connection took on a bigger role in 2019 when Pope Francis appointed Tagle as the head of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples, a position known as the Red Pope. In this powerful role, Tagle now oversees missionary work across the globe. This appointment reflects the Pope's confidence in him to guide the future of evangelization, particularly in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, regions that are increasingly shaping the Church's future. Their relationship, however, isn't purely professional. It's built on shared principles like prioritizing compassion over rigid rules, encouraging conversation instead of division, and focusing on action rather than words. Both have faced criticism from traditionalist groups, but remain committed to their vision of a loving and inclusive church. Cardinal Tagle's leadership style is marked by humility and humanity, aligning perfectly with the Pope's ideals. During Typhoon Haiyan in 2013, Tagle's quick response and compassion for those affected earned him a reputation as a leader of mercy, much like Pope Francis. Alongside his charitable work, Tagle's inclusive approach to theology and evangelization has made him a role model for progressive Catholics around the world. His dedication to building a church centered on love and unity perfectly complements the Pope's mission. Together, Pope Francis and Cardinal Tagle are shaping a future for the Catholic Church that is grounded in compassion, humility, and hope. Their partnership signals a shift towards a more inclusive and relevant church that can navigate the challenges of the modern world. Pope Francis has often said that leadership within the Church can't just be about tradition. It has to be about reaching out to those who are forgotten or left behind. Recently, the Pope made some comments that have once again raised questions about where Cardinal Luis Tagle fits into the Vatican structure. While the Pope hasn't exactly laid out his long-term plans for Tagle, it certainly seems like their work together has been carefully thought out. So, is Tagle's journey within the Church a sign of a shift toward change, from Manila to the global stage? Luis Tagle, who grew up on the streets of Manila and rose to the heights of the Vatican, is a truly inspiring figure with a life full of purpose. Born in 1957 in the Philippines, he's always been deeply connected to his community and committed to helping the poor. With a brilliant mind and a compassionate soul, Tagle decided early on to study theology and become a leading figure in the Catholic Church. His leadership journey really kicked off when he became the Archbishop of Manila in 2011. Filipino workers cheered the appointment, and many saw it as a positive sign for the Church. But Tagle didn't just take on a new title. He quickly became known for his reformist ideas, resisting the materialism and greed that had tainted leadership in the past. Instead, he focused on caring for the people, promoting missionary work, and advocating for justice. His sermons are deeply moving and resonate with millions, making him incredibly popular. So much so that people started calling him Asia's Francis. Tagle's rise to international fame didn't happen overnight. He earned recognition through several key appointments that revealed his growing influence within the Vatican. As president of Caritas Internationalis, a Catholic charity supporting 165 countries, he backed campaigns against poverty, hunger, and climate change. His ability to connect with people from all cultures and backgrounds made him the perfect choice to lead the Church's evangelization efforts. His appointment in 2019 as head of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples was a major turning point. It put him right at the heart of the Church's mission to spread the gospel across the world. Tagle's deep understanding of cultural differences allowed him to reshape the Church's evangelization strategies, especially in non-Western countries like those in Asia and Africa. So, what does all this popularity mean for Tagle? It's all about his ability to mobilize people, bridge gaps, and create meaningful connections. His skills in uniting different cultures and ideologies make him a key player in the future of the Church. Tagle's diplomatic skills, combined with his solid theological knowledge, have made him a leader who can tackle the complex challenges facing the Church today. As his influence at the Vatican grows, so does speculation about his future. Could he become even more involved? Or perhaps even be a contender for the next pope? And if that happens, what would a church under Tagle's leadership look like? Under Pope Francis, the Church has shifted its focus to those on the margins, often referred to as a church for the poor. This vision has been strengthened by having Cardinal Luis Tagle by his side. Together, they're pushing for justice, kindness, and compassion in society. Their efforts aren't just about charity. They aim to transform the very social fabric of the Church itself. Pope Francis's attention to the margins is clear. He sees the Church as a sanctuary for outcasts. As president of Caritas Internationalis, Tagle has led efforts against hunger, provided shelter for refugees, and confronted the challenges of climate change. His ability to negotiate resources and rally people to action has made him a key figure in the Church's charitable work. Listening is something Tagle stresses in all his work. He believes that if you truly listen, you open yourself to love, and those who love will never tire of listening. Instead of relying on traditional top-down authority, Tagle values conversation and seeks out voices from the edges of society. But focusing on the margins isn't without its critics. Some argue that when the Church's message becomes too focused on social causes, it risks overshadowing its core doctrines. There are accusations that Pope Francis and his supporters are compromising traditional Catholic values in the name of political correctness. Despite this, both the Pope and Tagle have stood firm, believing that if the Church doesn't engage with modern issues, it risks becoming irrelevant. In addition to his work in the humanitarian sector, Tagle is in an excellent position to assist in the advancement of the Pope's vision. His attempts to develop ties with people of different faiths demonstrate that the Church is dedicated to encouraging unity in a world that is becoming increasingly divided. As a result of Tagle's tight alignment with the message of the Pope, they want to foster tolerance and understanding by engaging in conversation with those who adhere to a variety of religious beliefs. As a result of the efforts of both Pope Francis and Cardinal Tagle, the Catholic Church is making an effort to interact with people on a more personal level, which is enhancing the development of modern Catholicism right in front of our attention. Could this new emphasis on the margins be a way for the Church to reinvent its purpose in a society that is changing and evolving at such a rapid pace? An unseen power struggle has always been at play in the Vatican, a tug-of-war that forms the authority of the Roman Catholic Church. This conflict has always been taking place behind the polished faces and visible unity surrounding the Vatican. At this moment, the Catholic Church finds itself at a crossroads, stuck between the demands of postmodern culture and the traditions of the past. The doctrinal struggles that are taking place are a manifestation of this tug-of-war, with reformists such as Pope Francis and Cardinal Tagle going up against more conservative forces. Their constant struggle is similar to a drama consisting of tensions that are not being spoken about. During his tenure as Pope, Pope Francis has been responsible for a number of key reforms, including the challenge to clericalism, the call for a church that is less centralized, and the dissemination of information regarding topics such as migration, climate change, and economic transparency. When he warned that the Earth might become uninhabitable if we do not take immediate action to address climate change, it was possibly one of the most audacious comments he ever made. The efforts that have been made, however, have not been without significant opposition. Some of the more ultra-conservative organizations within the Church have been quite vocal in their criticism of his changes, believing that they deviate too far from the traditional doctrines that are found in the Bible. The increased influence that Cardinal Tagle is exerting within the Vatican is an important factor in this power struggle. In spite of the fact that he is a good fit for Pope Francis's vision of a forgiving church that extends its hand to those who are on the edges, his approach has not necessarily been well received by everyone. In stark contrast to the more conventional and rigid viewpoints that have long dominated the Church, Tagle places a strong focus on open communication and responsible administration. As a result of this distinction, expectations for his leadership have been elevated, and questions have been raised regarding the challenges that he may encounter as he navigates the complex power dynamics of the Vatican. The oversight of financial transactions is one of the most significant difficulties that must be overcome. In an effort to make the Vatican's financial institutions more accountable and transparent, Pope Francis has been working hard to clean them up. On the other hand, this effort for reform has caused a significant lot of controversy to arise. As someone who is closely involved in the humanitarian efforts of the Church, Cardinal Tagle is in favor of these reforms and calls for even greater transparency. On the other hand, his approach has caused him to be at conflict with some within the Vatican who have vested interests, notably those power groupings who are deeply rooted in the existing quo and would rather keep things as they are. Tagle's efforts to bring about significant change are made more difficult by the fact that these parties view Tagle's reformist approach as a direct challenge to their influence. A further layer of complexity is added to the problem by the implementation of succession. The increasing visibility of Cardinal Tagle, along with other prospective possibilities, has many people wondering what path the Church will take once Francis's papacy finishes. Pope Francis has not directly pointed to his successor, but the increasing exposure of Cardinal Tagle has prompted this question. It is of the utmost importance for conservatives within the Church to preserve the conventional hierarchical structure, and they may give preference to leaders who are unwilling to pursue the reform agenda that Pope Francis has initiated. In the end, the power struggle that is taking place behind the scenes within the Vatican is about selecting who will be in charge of the Church in the years to come, and whether or not the legacy of Francis's reforms will be preserved. These power battles, on the other hand, are not isolated to the Vatican alone. Rather, they have a rippling effect among dioceses all over the world, impacting the way in which local leaders tackle global concerns such as poverty, migration, and climate change. The visible rift between the old guard and reformists like Pope Francis and Cardinal Tagle is becoming one of the distinguishing characteristics of this moment in Catholicism. This is despite the fact that conservative groups inside the Church continue to have a great amount of sway. The fact that this separation occurred underscores the growing conflict that exists between adhering to long-standing traditions and adjusting to the reality of a world that is changing at a rapid pace. Because of the outcome of these power conflicts, the Church's capacity to deal with the difficulties of the 21st century will be significantly impacted by the conclusion of these struggles. Therefore, in order for the Church to continue to be relevant in the face of challenges such as global inequality, climate change, and a decrease in religious involvement in Western countries, development is necessary. As a result of their emphasis on inclusiveness, social justice, and global solidarity, leaders such as Cardinal Tagle are in an excellent position to steer the Church through these transitions. However, it is still unclear how these leaders will strike a balance between the expectations of their followers and the requirement to engage the wider Catholic community. This is especially true when confronted with a flock that is so diverse and frequently divided along ideological lines. However, Cardinal Luis Tagle has already left an indelible impression on the Catholic Church, despite the fact that his journey within the Church is not yet complete. As an outspoken supporter of human rights, the underprivileged, and those on the margins of society, he has emerged as a figure of inspiration for progressive Catholics all over the world. His approach to modernizing the Church's outreach, in conjunction with his emphasis on meeting the needs of those who are disadvantaged, has received both appreciation and condemnation from those who have witnessed it. The Church is currently facing significant internal and external problems, which are pushing the institution to its limits. Despite his growing notoriety, his ascent to power comes at a time when the Church is experiencing these struggles. The struggle that he faces as a leader is centered on the conflict that exists between openness and control, as well as between tradition and progress. It is Tagle's capacity to connect with others that stands out as one of his most notable talents. It is because of his modest and personable demeanor that he is able to readily relate to people from all walks of life, whether he is speaking to a vast crowd in Manila or representing the Pope at local, national, or international events. His approach to leadership, which is founded on human connection and comprehension, stands in stark contrast to the more rigid and institutional approach that has been the defining characteristic of the Church for a very long time. A great number of people have voiced their desire for this sort of leadership, which is perceived as being more genuine and approachable to Christians in their everyday lives. Through the celebration of a more open and participatory style of experiencing faith, Cardinal Tagle has positioned himself as a revolutionary figure within the new Catholic Church. This new Catholic Church aspires to embrace modernity while remaining rooted in its vocation to assist those who are marginalized. As Tagle continues to manage the complexities of the Vatican's power structures and its broader mission in the world, it is likely that his capacity to advocate for justice and create unity among many factions will be the most important factor in determining the legacy he leaves behind. Tagle's vision for the future may give a way ahead in a church that is at a crossroads. This vision envisions a future in which the Church is not only a spiritual institution, but also a powerful force for social change and global unity. Whether or not this vision will resonate with the faithful of the Catholic Church, as well as how it will influence the future trajectory of the Church, is something that remains to be seen. Nevertheless, the process of constructing this legacy has not been devoid of difficulties. Asia and Africa are experiencing an increase in the number of faithful people, in contrast to Europe and North America, where the number of people who follow the Church continues to decrease. This demographic transition brings both opportunities and challenges, since it gives the Church more influence, but it also makes it more difficult to serve a membership that is so diverse and extensive. Thankfully, Tagle's cultural sensitivity, which was formed by his own non-Western heritage, places him in a good position to engage with these populations that are expanding. His leadership is famous for a number of reasons, one of which is his ability to successfully combine long-standing customs with contemporary fashions. Tagle has demonstrated that he is prepared to collaborate with the modern world, whether it be through the promotion of interfaith dialogue or the defense against climate change. Through his participation in the Climate Change Summit in Paris, he brought attention to the significance of fairness, equity, and social justice, which are ideals that he has been a strong advocate for. As a result, not everyone is on board with this. The conflicts that surround his leadership have been exacerbated by the fact that conservative sections within the Church have condemned him for departing from traditional principles. The way in which Tagle manages to satisfy all of these conflicting needs will be a significant factor in determining his legacy. Despite the fact that Pope Francis is leading the Church through a period of considerable change, the subject of leadership continues to be extremely important. It is imperative that the positive work that Francis has been doing be continued, and Tagle, with his unwavering devotion to the Pope and expanding influence within the Vatican, appears to be a pivotal figure in the process of determining the future of the Church. Is it possible that his progressive agenda will resonate with the huge and frequently polarized Catholic community that exists around the world? Tagle's legacy is yet beginning to take shape, and the road ahead will not be an easy one for him. While navigating a world that is undergoing rapid change, he is in charge of an organization that is steeped in tradition and has high expectations. The difficulty lies in preserving the hierarchical structure of the Church, while yet adapting to the changing circumstances. To this day, the question remains: is he capable of balancing the past with the future and catering to the requirements of a flock that is constantly changing? One of the characteristics that might be used to characterize Cardinal Luis Tagle's leadership is his capacity to instill hope and bring people together. Would he be able to pave the way for a new Catholic Church, one that is centered on restoring faith, embracing new members, and healing those who have been hurt? Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who is widely regarded as a formidable candidate for the position of Pope, is one of Tagle's primary competitors as the discussion surrounding the future Pope becomes increasingly heated. In addition to having a wealth of knowledge, Parolin is a high-ranking official who currently holds the position of Secretary of State for the Vatican. In contrast to Tagle, who is considered to be more of a pastoral reformist, Parolin is noted for his conservative views and his extensive involvement in the diplomatic efforts of the Vatican city-state. His proficiency in navigating the intricate global links of the Church, along with his expertise as a diplomat, has garnered him respect, particularly among those who adhere to traditionalist beliefs. Parolin is regarded as a master of the Vatican's internal politics in contrast to Tagle, who is seen as a defender of the people, particularly those who are on the edges of society. He has a lot of experience in settling conflicts and balancing out the various factions that exist within the Church. Some people have the impression that he takes a systematic and steady approach, favoring incremental development over radical innovations. Critics, on the other hand, contend that his approach might not be sufficiently courageous to meet the issues that the Church is currently facing in a world that is changing at a rapid pace. The disparity between Tagle and Parolin is illustrative of the more fundamental inconsistencies that exist within the contemporary Church. Parolin's more traditional and diplomatic sensibilities appeal to individuals who value stability and continuity, but Tagle's model of leadership is forward-thinking, inclusive, and compassionate. Tagle is a paradigm of leadership. Because of this split, significant questions have been raised regarding the future of the Catholic Church and the kind of leader that it requires. Additionally, the strong visibility of Parolin draws attention to the fact that Italian clergy continue to hold a dominant position within the Vatican, which is something that has been the case for centuries. Despite the fact that Pope Francis broke with this tradition, the likelihood of Parolin becoming Pope could be interpreted as a return to the traditional practices. When it comes to the discussion over the future of the Church, this adds an interesting new dimension to the argument between modernization and tradition. Despite the fact that Tagle and Parolin both have a profound enthusiasm for the mission of the Church, their approaches are very different from one another. It is possible that the answer to the question of who will follow Pope Francis will determine the course that the Catholic Church will take for many years to come. In light of the fact that the Church is coming up against growing polarization and complexity in the world, this is a crucial moment for the Church's future. If Cardinal Tagle were to become the new Pope, what are your thoughts on the matter and what kind of an impact would his leadership have?